How's it going, everyone? Playoff edition number third week, right, of prep football playoffs. Jeff Johnson here, Jeff Linder, K.J. Pilcher. We are in the round of 16, boys. I guess just to start out with, was there anything from last week that, that struck you? Any game or any team that maybe just kind of caught your attention with what they did, either winning or losing?
I'm trying to think what happened last week. It seems like it's been so long ago.
I think Waller beating Decorah. I think that kind of caught my eye a little bit. I think that surprised me a little. West Liberty moving on now to face Williamsburg. I think West Liberty won in overtime, maybe against Mount Vernon. I think that was a nice win for them as well. Those are two things that stuck out.
About the games you guys were at, I can't even remember where I was at. West Delaware knocked off we'll have a new champ in 3A, beat Western Dubuque, pretty handily. Looked really, really good offensively in particular. How about the games you guys were at last week?
I was at Prairie last week and really, really impressed with the way they played defense. They held Davenport North under 0 yards rushing and looked really good. That's a team that's playing really good football right now, and I think the game between them and Kennedy at Kingston on Friday it'll be a really good ball game.
KJ, where were you at?
I was at Xavier for Marion at Xavier. Xavier looked really impressive. The way they really ran the ball, came out and established the run right away. And I think their first 8 plays were rushes. I think they're actually first 9 on the opening series were rushes, ended in a touchdown. They scored like their first 5 or 6 possessions. And a lot of it was just, kind of imposing their will up front, which I was really impressed with their line. Jackson Rex Roth rushed for 4 touchdowns. He's put together a pretty good season as a starting quarterback this year for them. And Jack Lux, they both went over 100 yards. So I'm really impressed with the way they played.
All right, let's run through the pods. The IHSAA threw all the teams back into a hat after the last round and came up with 4 pods per class, 4 teams per pod, which gets us to our round of 16. Let's start out with Class 4A. Guys, we'll just maybe discuss these as a whole. Pod A, you have Bettendorf playing at Pleasant Valley tomorrow night, Dubuque Hempstead at Iowa City West. Pod B is Ankeny Centennial at Southeast Polk, and then as Jeff mentioned, Cedar Rapids Prairie at Cedar Rapids Kennedy at Kingston Stadium. Those are your Pod B teams. Your Pod C team, Cedar Falls is at Ankeny, Indianola at Waukee, and then Pod D, Waterloo West at 7-time defending champ West Des Moines Dowling. Actually, that'll be at Drake Stadium, and then West Des Moines Valley at Urbandale. I guess thoughts on any of the pods here in 4A?
Well, I guess. Go ahead, Linder.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
So it's set up that it's possible that it'd be 3 Central Iowa teams and one East. Is that possible? Is that right?
Or 4 Eastern Iowa teams.
Well, that could be too.
Probably not very likely, but
the other way around. Go ahead, KJ.
I was just going to say it's interesting to see which teams they decided to send west, because I think between those 4 teams of Iowa City West, Hempstead, Prairie, and Kennedy, I think you could have interchanged some of them depending on which pod they're in. I don't think it's out of the question that Prairie could have been in Pod A in Hempstead, or West went to Pod B Personally, I thought Kennedy was going to end up at Pleasant Valley in the first round, but no, it's just kind of interesting to see which teams they decided to send west for the second round, which you assume in Pod B it's going to be Southeast Polk. And the same thing with Cedar Falls. I mean, Cedar Falls could have been could have switched spots with one of those Pod A teams as well.
And like you said, Kennedy is what are they 3-3 to have a home game at this point? They've got to feel really, really good about that.
Yeah, that was a head scratcher. I know they won the head-to-head battle, but given what the teams had done during the season and everything else, surprised that they're hosting, even though they did win that head-to-head battle.
Right.
You look at that, two guys, Prairie and Cedar Falls both have 2 losses, right? And Prairie beat Cedar Falls. Yet they stick Prairie in with, unbeaten Southeast Polk. Cedar Falls, not saying it's, it's an easier task because it's not, because Ankeny is really, really good, obviously, and Waukee's good too. So I'm going, I don't know what you guys are picking, but I'm going with West, Ankeny, Southeast Polk, and Dowling. I'm really thinking outside the box here in 4A. What do you got?
I'd say that sounds pretty good.
Let's see. I just want to make sure I'm consistent with what I sent to Nathan earlier this week. I also had West, Polk, Ankeny, and Dowling.
Let's look at Class 3A now, our third round assignments. Your pods. Pod A is Boyd and Hull Rock Valley at Spencer tomorrow night, and Sergeant Bluff Luton at Webster City, Pod B is Huxley Ballard at Council Bluffs, Lewis Central, Carlisle at Harlan. Pod C, you've got Grinnell at Pella and Dubuque Wahlert at Cedar Rapids Xavier, as earlier mentioned. Then Pod D, one of the groups of death as far as I'm concerned here. West Delaware at Washington, Iowa, Davenport Assumption at North Scott. Boys, that Pod D is pretty darn strong, right?
Yeah, how would you like to be Assumption, being undefeated and having to go on the road for the round of 16?
North Scott, I will say the North Scott its loss was to Pleasant Valley, and North Scott was without its good quarterback. He was, I think, suspended for the first 2-3 games of the season. So they are a better team with him in the lineup. But, I think you can make a case for any of those 4 teams over there in Pod D. And, hard to bet against Xavier and Pod C, right? Right here, guys.
I would think with with a win over Grinnell already. I know you've got Wahlert, who's coming off a good win at Decorah and Pella in there, but boy, especially with Xavier being at home, I think that helps a ton. Pod D is just absolutely nuts when you kind of think about it. It's surprising they didn't try to split one of those teams up, because you could think West Delaware, maybe even Washington, and Wahlert could be interchanged depending on how they split things up. But do you know the acronym for Pod of Death is actually POD?
It is. Wow. I never thought.
2020 gets spookier and spookier. Yeah, you're right. This is a mini Pod of Death, because I think we can agree maybe the Pod of Death is coming in a few classes.
The other 2 pods out on the other side are Central and Western Iowa. Webster City is the only unbeaten team in Pod A, but I think that's kind of wide open, just my opinion. I think those other 3 teams out in extreme Northwest Iowa are pretty good, and they've kind of beaten each other, I guess, this season. And then, Harlan's your unbeaten team in Pod B, and potentially looking maybe at a matchup with rematch with Lewis Central. Harlan won that in the regular season.
And don't look past Ballard. Ballard might
Yeah.
surprise you a little bit.
Yep, I agree. And then,
And I know Carlisle had a big win too, but Ballard might be the thorn in the lion's paw over there.
let's look at Class 2A. Pod A is Esterville, Lincoln Central at Central Line, George Little Rock, West Line at Spirit Lake. Pod B, we've got Atlantic at West Marshall and Greene County at PCM. Pod C is all Eastern Iowa, Tipton at Comanche and West Liberty at Williamsburg. Pod D is Monticello at Waukon and Independence at Solon. Really, the only thing that stood out to me, guys, was Pod D. They put Waukon and Solon in the same pod.
Yeah, well, if you're Solon, you either get put in with Waukon or you get put in with Williamsburg. So there's really not a good option there either way. And there's a lot of power in that Pod A with the schools up there in Northwest Iowa.
I like.
Did we mention our? Hey, did we mention our dome teams from 3A?
Go for it. I did not.
Oh. Okay. Well, I just had since we did it in 4A, I had Boynton Hall, Rock Valley, Harlan, Xavier, and West Delaware coming out of the mini POD.
Lindy, what did you have?
I think I had Harlan, Webster City, Xavier, and Washington, if I remember correctly.
Washington. Okay. I got to admit, I don't remember who I picked in Pod A because I went back and forth and really vacillated on that. I think I went with BHRV, Xavier in Pod C, Harlan in B, and I think I went with West Delaware in Pod D, if I remember correctly. So those will be in the newspaper, right, Nathan? He's on mute, but.
He nods yes.
The pods in Class 2A, guys, what do you think here? What do you like? Obviously, Williamsburg's going to be a heavy favorite. Pod C, that Independent Solon game could be very interesting, I think, on tomorrow night. And, Waukon probably a pretty significant favorite over Monticello. And then, Pod B, you've got PCM, which has just rolled everybody this season. And, a West Marshall team that beat a 4A team from in town here in Cedar Rapids Jefferson. So what do you think here, guys?
Out of Pod A,
I went Central Line. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, out of Pod A, I went with Central Lion, George Little Rock. I really think it's them and the rest, to be honest. I know West Lion's sitting in there. Spirit Lake's gotten better as the season's gone on, I think. But I think Central Lion comes out of there. PCM, I think, is head and shoulders above the rest, even with what you said about West Marshall. I think Pool C is a little bit more up in the air than a lot of people think. I think West Liberty's playing better. I think Comanche is a team that can turn some heads here if you take them lightly. I still think Williamsburg's the favorite to get out of there. Pod D, that's going to be really interesting, I think. I mean, we all know how good Waukon is, and I think a lot of us have had high expectations from them all season long. Monticello is, I didn't really buy into them early on, but they've just done a great job. Solon's won 6 straight games. I mean, that's a team that maybe some of us kind of wrote off a little bit when, Williamsburg beat them. It was only 17-14, I think, in the season opener. And then they got beat by Washington, which Washington's turned out to be a real quality 3A team. Solon could be a team to be reckoned with. I went back and forth with them and Waukon. I think I settled on Waukon coming out of Pod D, but I'll tell you what, I wouldn't be surprised if Solon ends up in the Dome again.
Yeah, I've got Solon winning Pod D. Williamsburg, I think I went with the West Lion in a rematch with Central Lion over there in Pod A, and then PCM in Pod B. In my opinion, I guess is the team to beat in 2A. So, Lindy, what did you say you had?
I think I had everything the same as KJ.
Okay.
The Lion, PCM, Waukon, Williamsburg.
Let's go with Class 1A now. We look at the assignments. Third round, Pod A is Western Christian at OABCIG. Emmitsburg plays at West Sioux. Then over at Pod B, your teams are South Central Calhoun at South Hamilton and Denver at Southeast Valley. Pod C, Pella Christian at Van Meter, Underwood at Mount Air. And then Pod D is Mediapolis at Waterloo Columbus, Dyersville Beckman at Sigourney Keota. Our only two area teams left are Beckman and Sigourney Keota, guys. What do you think of the pods here in Class 1A?
I think the talent's pretty spread out, really. I know Pod B has 3 ranked teams there and a couple undefeateds, but I think for the most part they spread things out as well as could be expected. It'll be interesting to see that the Sigourney Keota Dyersville Beckman game. Make sure to keep an eye for people watching. Make sure to keep an eye on the Gazette.com. I'll have a little feature on the Sigourney Keota team coming into this week. Just the fact that last year, such a disappointing finish. Going to 8-1, winning their first 8 games, losing to Meepo in week 9, and then the RPI keeping them out of the playoffs as well. I mean, it was a tough one to swallow, and sounds like that really motivated a lot of guys through the off season. They had to change some stuff up front because I think they graduated 3 out of their 5 starting linemen. So they moved some guys around, had a guy move from tight end to tackle, and that solidified the guys up front after a week or two. And of course, they've got some really talented skill guys in that spinner back offense. Cade Mullenix, Sam Searin, Brady Dua, and their defense. Coach Jared Jensen said their defense is probably the best defense they've had in a long time. They've thrown a couple shutouts, and they look really strong here hosting Beckman, who I believe is coached by Mark Atwater. Is that right?
Yep. One of the good guys. Yep.
So it'll be interesting.
Well, it's pretty cool. We could have 3 champions run the old single wing boys when you look at it. Sigourney Keota in 1A and Webster City's in the round of 16 in 3A. And, of course, Cedar Rapids Prairie runs a version of the single wing as well. So maybe everybody should stop the spread and go to the single wing, right? To me, it's OABCIG's to lose here, obviously, with Cooper DeJean, who's a dynamic player heading to the University of Iowa. I like them to win it all. I got South Hamilton in Pod B. I believe I went with Van Meter in Pod C, and I like SK there to get out of Pod D and head to the Dome.
Same.
The only thing I had different, I had Underwood instead of Van Meter.
And that very well could play out that way. No question about that. So let's look at Class A. Excuse me. Our pods. Pod A out in Western Iowa, of course. South O'Brien at Council Bluffs, St. Albert. Oakland Riverside at Logan Magnolia. Pod B is Hartley Melvin Sanborn at West Hancock. Nottoway Valley at Grundy Center. Pod C, we've got Lisbon at Wapsie Valley and Alburnett at Iowa City Regina. And then another one of those pods of death, Pod D, MFL Marmac at Edco and South Winneshiek at St. Ansgar. You can legit, boys, take any one of those 4 teams out of Pod D and make a case for them that they're going to win that thing, right?
Absolutely.
Let's see, St. Ansgar obviously went through undefeated. Edco's undefeated. MFL and South Winneshiek finished with 1 loss each. And let's see, MFL beat South Win, if I remember correctly, in the regular season, right? So
Yeah,
who knows?
Yep.
Maybe a rematch there. Look at the other pods. Grundy Center, I think, obviously is a prohibitive favorite in Pod B. You got to like Regina in Pod C probably. And, to me, Pod A is pretty wide open. I think I went with Logan Magnolia, but look out for Council Bluffs St. Albert. What do you guys think?
I just want to throw out some numbers with that Pod D. So you have 4 ranked teams. All 4 teams are ranked 7th or better, at least in our poll. I don't know or care about the others that are out there. You have 2 out of the 3 remaining undefeated teams are in this pod in Class A. I think the only undefeated team in Class A is Grundy Center, which is ranked number 1. So you mentioned Edco and St. Ansgar. Together, the 4 teams are 31-2 combined. Now, I know we're getting deeper in the playoffs, so the records are going to be better regardless. But all 4 of these teams either won a district or shared in the district title. All 4. And they're grouped together, and 2 of them are on the road. I mean, you have to have that. But that brings me to another thing, apparently, on how some of this stuff was decided. And we heard from some people about the infamous blind disc flip that they're going to determine maybe kind of unofficial district champion out of the 3 for pairings and hosting purposes, which I thought was silly. And for people that don't know, apparently they had team names in envelopes. They gave them to official association guys. They had colored flips that were red and green. They flipped them. Whoever had the odd number color or the odd color. So if 2 of them were red and 1 was green, the person with the green disc opened up their envelope, and that team was considered the district champion. That's why Wapsie Valley is hosting, and MFL Marmac and South Lynn are on the road. And at first, I was like, God, this is so stupid. This is dumb. This is going to affect things. But then when you look at it, who would you rather be right now? Would you rather be MFL and South Lynn on the road? Or would you rather be Wapsie Valley, who apparently won the disc flip, host a first-round game, but be in a pod with Regina and having to head down to possibly Regina, assuming they get by Albernet, who doubled their postseason win victory last week with their second against Belle Plaine. But who's actually sitting better? MFL and South Lynn in the pot of death. Yeah, I got out of the way. Are they sitting better even though they're on the road? Or you get 1 home game and then you're probably going to be heading down to Regina. The more I think about it, I think probably MFL and South Lynn actually got the better of the deal, losing the disc flip.
By the way, that was my wife that just brushed past me earlier. If anybody noticed some strange woman coming in behind me. She says hello. So who'd you have here in Class A, guys? I think I picked mine: Logan, Loma, Grundy, Regina, and actually I didn't give Pod D. I'm just going with St. Ansgar. Actually, you know what? I think I went with MFL Marmac, so I apologize for that. Who do you got here?
I can't remember what you said, but I think I had the same: Loma, Grundy, Regina, and MFL.
Jeff Linder?
I went back and forth. I went with St. Ansgar, Regina, Grundy, and I went with St. Albert.
Okay. Yeah, that's, team that lost a couple games early, and one of them was the 3A Lewis Central. So definitely a capable club there. Let's look at 8th player to finish out here. The 3rd round of Simon's Pod A is Harris Lake Park, kind of a surprise, knocked off Coon Rapids Bayard, if I remember correctly, last week. They draw Remsen St. Mary's tomorrow night at Remsen. Newell Fonda's at Audubon. Pod B is Lamoni at Cumberland Anita Messina, otherwise known as CAM. Fremont Mills at Martinsdale St. Mary's. There is a hyphen in there, by the way. Pod C, New London at Janesville Trappola at Don Bosco. And then Pod D is Easton Valley at Gladbrook Rhinebeck, BGM at Montezuma. Guys, I just look at that Pod A. I think we're probably on a collision course between Remsen and Audubon, which we've all had ranked, 2-3 pretty much all season. And, can anybody stop Don Bosco? Maybe that's the biggest question. What do you guys think? No thoughts?
I'll go ahead. I went with, I got Don Bosco. I've got Easton Valley. I've got Remsen St. Mary's. And I believe I've got CAM. Okay.
KJ, what do you think?
I've got Remsen, Martinsdale, Don Bosco, and Gladbrook Rhinebeck. I think those 2 first-round games in Pod D could be pretty fun. At least, I don't know if it's there might be better pods, but I think those 2 games would be pretty competitive or pretty fun to watch.
I don't know. I just think BGM's going to give Montezuma a heck of a game tomorrow night. I don't know what you guys
think too.
And, wasn't Martinsdale the team that last year the coach was pleading for somebody to come out so they could have a season, or was that 2 years ago? Do you remember that?
Last year.
Was it last year?
I think they were still Class A last year, weren't they?
I think that's right. Jeff. So that they've had a heck of an undefeated season. So, I guess where are you guys going to be tomorrow night? KJ, you're going to be at Solon Independence, is that right?
Yep, I will be at Independence Solon. There, I'm kind of anxious to see. Should be a pretty good game. I think Independence graduated a lot from last year, but boy, they've played really well. I believe Marcus Beatty has put up some really good numbers for Independence, and of course Solon. Like I said earlier, they had those 2 early losses to two quality teams. Now that you look back at it with Williamsburg and Washington, so they're on a roll right now and played pretty good last week against Solon. So
I want a scouting report on the Tono Cornell, KJ. He's the freshman offensive lineman or lineman at Independence, who apparently is a D1 type kid.
So I look forward to seeing that.
Jeff,
keep an eye out.
That's at KJ Pilcher, by the way, at JT Linder. Jeff, you've just got a few balls flying in the air right now. Where are you going to be tomorrow night?
I don't know. I might be in my hotel room in Fort Dodge between sessions of the state cross country meet, or I might, if the weather's decent, I might run out to a game somewhere out there. Is South Central Calhoun at home? That's close. Southeast Valley is close to Fort Dodge. I could go over to Webster City, or I might just sit and watch you guys tweak the results from over this way.
Is Jewel close to Fort Dodge?
It's not far.
That's where South Central Calhoun's playing. So
okay, well, I could do that. I could go see the single wing and reintroduce myself to Bob Howard. Is Southeast Valley at home?
Southeast Valley is home against Denver.
Okay, so that's Gowrie, right? I think that's real close. So I've got options.
Yes, tell everybody it's 2 days of cross country. They split up the classes to keep fewer people gathered together, I guess. So that's tomorrow and Saturday, and then the fun starts at what did they just name it? I can't even remember the name of what used to be the South Center now, but they just gave it a new name.
Powerhouse.
There you go. You'll be at the Alliant Energy Powerhouse, Jeff, next week.
I'm sorry. Can I bitch about this for a second? Can I?
Go for it.
Nathan, will you allow me to bitch about this? Okay.
He says yes.
What a dumb name. What? Seriously, who? Okay, the U.S. Cellular, they have the rights right now, right? That goes through the end of the year, whatever it is, or now it's
I
they changed.
think it changed a month or two ago.
Okay, well they didn't name it the U.S. Cellular Cell. Okay, it was the U.S. Cellular Center. That sounds professional. That sounds like a neat place to go. Then you let the people that run events, you let the teams come up with the wacky nickname for marketing. You call it the Alliant Energy Arena, and then you let the football team that plays there, or the soccer team that plays there, or when you're doing media stuff for the state volleyball tournament, come to the powerhouse, the Alliant Energy Arena powerhouse. And you can do wacky little vignettes or the videos before the action starts with lightning bolts and power and all that stuff, and you kind of zoom in on the arena and powerhouse and lightning bolts, and then bam. You don't need it. Sounds like a kid's cartoon. Alliant Energy Powerhouse. Welcome to the Alliant Energy Powerhouse, starring whatever. Sorry, I saw that and I'm like, you know what? That's what Cedar Rapids. I mean, you have something. This is a business, right? I mean, you're competing against other area arenas. We've talked about that. You look at what's going on in Cordoba right now. You don't want to give it some quirky novelty name because it just seems like silly. Who's going to want to go there? I know, but you still have the naming, the Energy Arena. That's great. The powerhouse is just silly to make it an official name. You make that the nickname, or it's Wells Fargo Arena, right? People call it the Well. Some people call it the bank, the vault, whatever the hell they call it. But it's Wells Fargo Arena. Then you let the marketing people do the nickname and incorporate that and stuff. But the official name is Wells Fargo Arena. Your official name is the Alliant Energy Powerhouse. How goofy is that? I think I just think it's silly.
Right up there with the let's see, what was it? Dale and Thomas Popcorn Field at Veterans Memorial Stadium back in the day.
Yeah.
Wasn't that it? Dale and Thomas, or I think.
Yeah.
Ballpark the only ballpark ever in America where they didn't sell fresh popcorn to the fans.
But I will say this. I am glad that Alliant Energy is the one that is sponsoring that, especially after what's happened here in the last couple months. With the duration with us, I know the Alliant people have worked their butts off trying to get people back on the grid after that. I mean, everybody knows exactly how devastating that was, and Alliant did a hell of a job getting people back up and running and getting the city going again. So I'm glad Alliant is, involved in that arena and part of that. I just wish people would have been smarter, just name it something professional and then use the powerhouse stuff as your marketing and branding thing with the events and doing the fun stuff on the periphery and not the actual name of the arena. But anyway, so I've been waiting to babble and bitch about that. So thanks.
I like it. I'm trying to think where I'll be at Kingston tomorrow night at JE 66 for the Prairie Kennedy rematch. Jeff, anything you want to say about prep volleyball other than stay socially distanced and mask up, kids?
Yeah, and they're going to they're making an effort to do that. The matches are going to be 2.5 hours apart instead of 2. They're going to clear the arena out after every match so that they can do a little bit of quick sanitization. So they're trying. So we'll see what happens.
How did you feel, just out of curiosity? I mean, you spent a lot of time in gyms this fall. Did you feel pretty safe? Did you feel like everybody was kind of doing their part for the most part to keep safe?
I think more as the season went along. I think the masks became a lot more common, a lot more required, and The crowds weren't as big this year, and that's fine. A lot of people were hesitant to come, and a regional final last night between Belle Plaine and Springville, which ordinarily would probably have a full house at Benton Community, was maybe half full. So people I think they're doing what they see as safe, I believe.
Kind of a template, maybe going into the winter season. With basketball right around the corner and wrestling as well. So, and that sounds like that's just chaos over on the other side of the river, boys. Let's talk about that real quick, and then we'll sign off. Illinois has decided to go ahead with basketball as planned, but wrestling will now be a summer sport, declared yesterday. KJ, does that mean we're going to have a bunch of kids transfer over across the river and try and wrestle this winter? What do you think?
Possibly. I think that's a possibility. The fact that they do have a summer season. I mean, it's not going to be. I guess I can't really say that because you never know when summer comes around where we're going to be sitting. We're assuming everything's going to be fine, but in March, I assumed in November we'd be fine as well. But that's not necessarily the case. So yeah, you certainly could see that influx. I think you probably would run into more of a Eastern Iowa influence. I mean, we saw a lot of the transfers go to Central Iowa, right, for football. That seems to be where the majority of, at least the well-known ones, went to. I think the programs on the eastern side of the state are pretty strong, where they'll attract anybody from Illinois coming in. The one thing that I really wonder about is how it's going to affect tournaments team-wise and participation-wise, because I know there are a few tournaments that really that do have a lot of out-of-state teams that come over and teams that come from Illinois. Now, what do they do? And what happens if Wisconsin and Missouri follow suit? Because Iowa has the rule where they can't compete outside of those bordering states, right? They have that travel restriction, and it also works on the other side with teams coming in. So I think that might be more of an issue than maybe the individuals transferring in. From what, just looking at it really briefly, it looks like the season in Illinois that they have planned in the summer would butt up against junior nationals in Fargo if USA Wrestling if they end up hosting that in July. That might be an issue with some people too, because they may not want to be in a full varsity season up until that point. Or it could be the other way around, where, you know what, it worked better if we wrestled in the summer. You have that intense training up until 3 weeks before, and then you can just kind of idle down and then pick up and be in pretty good shape for junior nationals. So we'll see. But it'll have some type of impact on Iowa wrestling for sure.
And I think if I saw right, Jeff, it is up to each individual school and school district now to decide if they actually want to have a basketball season. So, that still could, I suppose it could create some sort of transfers over here. Although I suppose if you're in a school district in Illinois where that they're not going to play, why don't you just go to a school district in the state that's going to, I guess. So, just
right. I don't know what's going to happen. Yeah, kind of going back to wrestling. I hope what we don't see is kids transferring over here to wrestle and then transferring back to wrestle in the summer.
Would they do that?
What's that?
Would they be able to do that? I suppose it's not stopping them. I mean, I
don't know. I mean, if
are football players going to be able to do that?
I don't know what the eligibility.
Well, it's just interesting. It's unfortunate that we're in this situation, but I know we'll fight through it and come out better on the other side, as the old cliche goes, through this whole thing. So, guys, stay safe this weekend. Any closing thoughts from anybody? Yeah, me either.
I have one
See you
question.
next
though.
week.
I have one
Go for it.
question really quick. So I noticed banners were handed out after this last win, I think.
Yeah.
So do teams get credit for playoff appearances from the first round of the postseason?
No.
Or is it now that they're to the 16, now they're considered actual playoff teams?
Right. Teams are not credited with a playoff berth unless they get to the final 16.
Okay, that's what I was wondering for sure, because tried to word some things differently. Like Alburnett had 2 playoff wins coming into this year, and then they won 2 games. I worded it as postseason victories instead of playoff victories because I wasn't sure. So that clears things up.
Yep.
So now we have the actual playoff qualifiers this week.
Right.
Pre-playoffs. This was the pre-playoffs, I guess. I don't know.
We should have come up with a better name for that, I suppose.
Yes. So, all right, guys. Thanks for this. As usual, Nathan. Thank you. Go Wartburg. He's got a Wartburg flag flying in the background, if in case you were wondering. So, stay safe. Have a great weekend, Jeff. Have a great next week as well. And folks, thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you again soon. Take care.